Has this ever happened to you? You meet someone who seems absolutely wonderful. They're charming, supportive, understanding. They make you feel seen, heard, valued. Months pass, maybe even years, and slowly something changes. You start feeling drained after spending time with them. You question your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own reality. You find yourself walking on eggshells, constantly explaining yourself, wondering what you did wrong. But here's what nobody tells you: you didn't do anything wrong. You just encountered what Carl Jung called the shadow in disguise. People who have learned to weaponize kindness, to manipulate through care, to control through compassion. These individuals don't announce their toxicity with obvious red flags. They wrap it in smiles, in helpfulness, in what appears to be love. Jung spent decades studying the dark side of human psychology, and he discovered something terrifying. The most dangerous people aren't the ones who hurt you loudly. They're the ones who hurt you quietly, systematically, while convincing you that you're imagining it all. They don't break you with violence. They erode you with kindness that has poison at its core. Tonight, I'm going to reveal 7 personality types that Jung identified as the hidden predators of emotional well-being. These people walk among us every day, wearing masks so convincing that even trained psychologists can miss them initially. But once you learn to see through their disguises, once you understand their patterns, you'll never be fooled again. This isn't about becoming paranoid or closing your heart to the world. It's about developing what Jung called conscious discernment, the ability to protect your energy while remaining open to genuine connection. Because the truth is, when you can spot the counterfeit, you become infinitely better at recognizing the authentic. Before we explore these 7 types, we need to understand why they're so effective at what they do. Traditional psychology focused on obvious forms of abuse, physical violence, clear emotional attacks, blatant manipulation. But Jung went deeper. He studied what he called relational vampirism, the subtle ways people drain others while appearing to care. These individuals have mastered what psychologists now call covert manipulation. They've learned that direct aggression triggers our defense systems, but kindness with hidden agendas slips past our psychological radar. They understand that if they can make us feel guilty for questioning them, we'll stop questioning them altogether. The reason these people are so dangerous is that they target our deepest human needs: the need to be loved, to be valued, to belong, to feel special. They offer what appears to be fulfillment of these needs, but it comes with invisible strings attached. And by the time you realize you're trapped in those strings, you've often lost yourself completely. Jung believed that people develop these patterns as survival mechanisms. Somewhere in their past, they learned that manipulation works better than honesty, that control feels safer than vulnerability, that taking from others is easier than developing themselves. But understanding their origins doesn't make them any less dangerous to your well-being. First type: the emotional leech. This person has perfected the art of draining your energy while appearing to need your help. They always have a crisis, always have drama, always have some urgent situation that requires your immediate attention and emotional investment. But notice something crucial: their problems never actually get solved, no matter how much you help. The emotional leech operates through what psychologists call trauma bonding. They share their deepest wounds with you early in the relationship, creating a false sense of intimacy and connection. You feel special because they've chosen you to confide in. You feel needed because they seem so broken and helpless. But here's the trap: their healing isn't their goal. Their goal is keeping you hooked through their pain. Every time you try to step back, they have a new emergency. Every time you set a boundary, they have a breakdown. Every time you focus on your own life, they remind you how much they're suffering. Jung would say they've become addicted to their own victim identity because it gives them power over others. They've learned that people will tolerate almost anything from someone who's going through a hard time. They use your compassion against you, turning your kindness into chains that bind you to their chaos. The devastating part is how they make you feel guilty for having needs of your own. When you mention your own struggles, they either minimize them or somehow make them about their pain. When you achieve something good, they find a way to bring the conversation back to their suffering. You start to feel selfish for wanting joy, success, or peace. Recognition signs. They drain your energy consistently. You feel heavy after spending time with them. Their problems multiply rather than resolve despite constant help. They make you feel guilty for having boundaries or good things in your life. Second type, the master manipulator. This person has studied you like a textbook. They know exactly what you want to hear, exactly how to make you feel special, exactly which buttons to push to get what they want. They're charming, attentive, seemingly perfect, until you realize you're not in a relationship with a person, but with a performance. The master manipulator operates through what Jung called false mirroring. They reflect back your desires, dreams, and values so perfectly that you feel like you've found your soulmate. But scratch the surface, and there's nothing underneath except the ability to adapt, to perform, to become whatever will get them what they want. They study your language patterns and mirror them back. They research your interests and suddenly develop passionate opinions about them. They watch how you respond to different types of attention and adjust their behavior accordingly. You're not dating a person, you're dating a psychological algorithm designed to exploit your needs. The terrifying aspect is how convincing they can be. They might maintain their performance for months or even years. They'll remember small details about your life, surprise you with thoughtful gestures, say exactly what you need to hear during difficult times. But it's all calculated, all strategic, all designed to build your dependency on their validation. Jung warned that these individuals have often completely dissociated from their authentic selves. They've become so skilled at being what others want that they no longer know who they actually are underneath the performance. This makes them incredibly dangerous because they can lie without feeling like they're lying. They've lost touch with truth itself. The manipulation becomes clear when you start having needs they can't meet through performance. When you need genuine emotional support, authentic vulnerability, or real consistency, they falter. That's when the mask starts slipping, and you begin to see the emptiness underneath. Third type, the covert controller. This person never tells you what to do directly. Instead, they plant seeds of doubt, create subtle pressure, and manipulate circumstances so that you end up choosing what they wanted all along. They make you feel like every decision is your own while ensuring those decisions always benefit them. The covert controller operates through what psychologists call ambient manipulation. They create an emotional atmosphere where certain choices feel good and others feel bad. They use their moods, their approval, their energy to subtly guide your behavior without ever issuing direct commands. They might say things like, "Of course, it's your choice, but I just worry that." Or, "I support whatever you decide, but have you considered?" Or, "I trust your judgment, but what if?" They present doubt as care, limitation as protection, control as love. Jung identified this pattern in people who are terrified of being abandoned but too proud to admit their needs directly. Instead of saying, "I need you to stay close," they create situations where leaving becomes difficult. Instead of saying, "I'm insecure," they make you doubt your other relationships. The devastating effect is that you start second-guessing your own instincts. You begin to question decisions you were confident about. You find yourself choosing safety over growth, familiarity over opportunity, their comfort over your authentic desires. And because it happens so gradually, you don't notice until you realize you're living someone else's life. They're particularly dangerous to people with strong empathy because they exploit your ability to feel their emotions. They project anxiety when you want to grow, sadness when you want independence, fear when you want to take risks. You absorb these emotions and mistake them for your own wisdom. Fourth type, the competitive friend. This person presents themselves as your biggest supporter while secretly competing with everything you do. They celebrate your successes publicly but undermine them privately. They offer encouragement while simultaneously planting doubts. They want to be close enough to know your plans but distant enough to sabotage them. The competitive friend operates through what Jung called shadow projection. They see in you everything they wish they could be but don't have the courage to develop in themselves. Instead of using you as inspiration for their own growth, they see you as a threat to their self-image. They have a peculiar way of turning every conversation into a comparison. If you share good news, they'll either minimize it or immediately share their own, better, news. If you're struggling, they'll offer help that somehow emphasizes their superior position. If you're excited about something, they'll find subtle ways to deflate your enthusiasm. Jung observed that these people are often high achievers themselves, which makes their competitiveness harder to spot. They're not obvious failures jealous of your success. They're successful people who cannot tolerate anyone else being successful without their permission or control. The psychological mechanism at work is what Jung called ego inflation. Their sense of self is so fragile that it requires constant validation through comparison. They need to feel special, chosen, superior. And anyone who threatens that narrative, even through innocent success, becomes an unconscious enemy. The relationship feels draining because you can never fully relax into your achievements or authentic self-expression. There's always an underlying tension, a sense that you need to manage your success carefully around them. You start unconsciously downplaying your wins or avoiding sharing positive news altogether. Fifth type, the intellectual bully. This person weaponizes knowledge, wisdom, and emotional intelligence to maintain power over others. They present themselves as more evolved, more conscious, more spiritually advanced. They use psychological language to invalidate your feelings and philosophical concepts to justify their superior position. The intellectual bully operates through what Jung called spiritual materialism, using spiritual or psychological concepts to feed the ego rather than transcend it. They've learned the language of growth and healing, but they use it to control rather than connect. They say things like, "That sounds like a trauma response," or "You're projecting your shadow," or "That's just your ego talking." They pathologize your emotions, intellectualize your experiences, and make you feel spiritually or emotionally inferior whenever you disagree with them. Jung was particularly concerned about this type because they often appear in helping professions, spiritual communities, and therapeutic spaces. They use their knowledge as a shield against genuine intimacy and as a weapon against anyone who challenges their authority. The insidious part is how they make you doubt your own emotional intelligence. You start feeling like you need their interpretation to understand your own experiences. You begin censoring your authentic reactions because you're afraid they'll analyze and dismiss them. They never admit to being wrong because they've positioned themselves as the authority on consciousness itself. If you challenge them, you're resistant to growth. If you disagree with them, you're not ready for this level of awareness. If you call out their behavior, you're projecting your own issues. Sixth type, the savior complex. This person needs to rescue others to feel valuable, but their help always comes with invisible strings attached. They insert themselves into your problems, offer unsolicited advice, and create dependency relationships where you become grateful for their intervention in issues they often helped create. The savior operates through what psychologists call codependent enabling. They need to be needed, so they unconsciously seek out or create situations where others require their help. They're drawn to people with problems not because they genuinely want to help, but because helping feeds their ego and ensures continued connection. Jung understood that this pattern often develops in people who were parentified as children, forced to take care of others' emotional needs before developing their own identity. They learned to feel valuable only when they were solving someone else's problems. The dangerous aspect is how good their help can feel initially. They often are genuinely skilled at problem solving, offering support, providing resources. But notice the subtle shift that happens over time. You become increasingly dependent on their input, increasingly grateful for their presence, increasingly unable to make decisions without their approval. They maintain control by ensuring you never fully heal or become independent. They offer enough help to keep you functional, but never enough to make you truly free. They want to be your solution, not help you become your own solution. The relationship becomes psychologically exhausting because there's always an unspoken debt. Every kindness comes with expectation. Every helpful gesture creates obligation. You start feeling guilty for not needing them enough or not being grateful enough for their constant intervention. Seventh type, the emotional vampire. This person feeds off emotional intensity, creating drama wherever they go while positioning themselves as the innocent party. They thrive on chaos, conflict, and emotional extremes, but they never own their role in creating these situations. The emotional vampire operates through what Jung called affect contagion, their ability to spread their emotional states to everyone around them. They have an uncanny ability to sense and exploit others' emotional vulnerabilities, creating situations that force others to feel as unstable as they do internally. They create what psychologists call trauma bonding cycles. They generate intense emotional experiences, both positive and negative, that create addictive relationship patterns. The highs feel incredible, making you feel more alive than ever before. But the lows are devastating, leaving you confused, exhausted, and somehow always coming back for more. Jung identified this pattern in people who never learned to self-regulate emotionally. They use others as external nervous systems, relying on relationships to provide the emotional stability they cannot create internally. But instead of working toward emotional independence, they keep others trapped in their chaos. The relationship feels like an emotional roller coaster where you never know which version of them you'll encounter. They might be charming and loving one day, cold and distant the next, explosive and dramatic the day after. You find yourself constantly trying to figure out what mood they're in and how to navigate it safely. What makes them particularly dangerous is how they make their emotional instability feel like passion, depth, or authenticity. They convince you that people who don't create emotional drama are boring, shallow, or emotionally unavailable. You start believing that love should hurt, that intensity equals intimacy, that chaos means you matter. Jung's most profound insight wasn't just about identifying toxic people, it was about understanding why we attract them in the first place. According to his theory of the collective unconscious, we're drawn to people who represent our own unintegrated shadow material. If you consistently attract victims, examine the part of you that needs to be needed to feel valuable. If you're drawn to manipulators, look at the ways you abandon your own truth to keep others comfortable. If you tolerate controllers, investigate how you've given your power away and why external approval feels more important than internal alignment. This isn't about blaming yourself for others' toxic behavior. It's about understanding that toxic people have psychological radar for unhealed wounds, unmet needs, and unintegrated shadow material. They unconsciously seek out people who will tolerate their dysfunction because they recognize familiar energy patterns. The good news is that shadow integration works both ways. As you heal your own wounds, set healthy boundaries, and develop authentic self-worth, toxic people lose their ability to hook into your energy. You become psychologically unavailable to their manipulation tactics. Jung called this process individuation, becoming who you truly are rather than who you think you should be. The more individuated you become, the more you attract people who are also doing their own psychological work. The energy signature of an integrated person repels those who operate from shadow material. Recognizing these patterns is only the first step. The real work lies in developing what Jung called psychological immunity, the internal strength that makes you resistant to manipulation and emotional exploitation. The first element of psychological immunity is self-awareness. You must develop the ability to notice your own emotional states, your own patterns, your own triggers. When you're unconscious of your own psychology, you become easy prey for those who operate through shadow manipulation. Start paying attention to how you feel after spending time with different people. Notice who energizes you and who drains you. Observe which relationships require constant explanation and which ones flow naturally. Your body keeps score even when your mind makes excuses. The second element is emotional sovereignty. Taking full responsibility for your own emotional state regardless of what others do or say. This doesn't mean becoming cold or disconnected. It means recognizing that your peace, your joy, your sense of self-worth cannot be dependent on anyone else's behavior. Emotional sovereignty requires developing what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to hold opposing feelings without being torn apart by them. You can feel compassion for someone while maintaining firm boundaries. You can love someone while refusing to enable their dysfunction. You can care about someone while choosing to protect your own well-being. The third element is discernment without judgment. This means learning to see people clearly without making them wrong for being who they are. Some people are not safe for close relationships, not because they're evil, but because they're unconscious. You can acknowledge this reality without hatred, anger, or the need to change them. The art of strategic withdrawal. Jung believed that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is remove yourself from someone's dysfunction. He called this strategic withdrawal, stepping back not from anger or hurt, but from consciousness and self-respect. Strategic withdrawal doesn't require dramatic confrontations or detailed explanations. In fact, Jung warned against trying to make unconscious people understand your boundaries. They often lack the psychological framework to comprehend why their behavior is problematic. Instead, you simply begin creating space. You become less available for their drama. You stop responding to every crisis with immediate attention. You reduce the emotional investment you make in their problems. You become politely unavailable for the patterns that drain you. The key is doing this without guilt or the need to justify your choices. Toxic people often escalate their behavior when they sense you pulling away because they're terrified of losing their emotional supply. They might become more dramatic, more needy, more convincing in their appeals for your attention. This is where your psychological immunity becomes crucial. You must remain centered in your own knowing even when they're trying to pull you back into their dysfunction. Remember, their reaction to your boundaries tells you everything you need to know about their true intentions. Reclaiming your energy, the integration process. Once you've identified and distanced yourself from toxic influences, the real healing work begins. You must examine why you were susceptible to their manipulation in the first place and heal those vulnerable areas within yourself. Jung believed that every external relationship reflects internal dynamics. If you attracted someone who made you feel small, examine the part of you that already believed you were small. If you tolerated someone who disrespected your boundaries, investigate why you struggle to respect your own boundaries. This process requires what Jung called shadow work, consciously examining and integrating the parts of yourself you've rejected or denied. Often, the traits that most annoy us in others are traits we possess but refuse to acknowledge in ourselves. For example, if you're constantly attracting manipulative people, you might need to examine your own relationship with manipulation. Are there ways you manipulate others through guilt, through being too nice, through withholding your authentic thoughts and feelings? The more honest you become about your own shadow, the less you'll attract others operating from theirs. This integration work also involves developing what Jung called the authentic self, who you are when you're not performing for others' approval. Many people have spent so much energy being what others want that they've lost touch with their own desires, values, and instincts. Developing immunity to toxic people requires practical daily practices that strengthen your psychological boundaries and deepen your self-awareness. First, develop what Jung called conscious attention. Start noticing the subtle energy changes that happen during conversations. Pay attention to how your body feels when certain people speak to you. Notice if you find yourself explaining or defending yourself frequently with specific individuals. Your nervous system often recognizes danger before your mind does. If you feel inexplicably tense, drained, or off around someone, trust that information even if you can't logically explain it. Jung believed that the unconscious communicates through bodily sensations, intuitive knowing, and emotional shifts. Second, Practice what Jung called holding the tension of opposites. You can appreciate someone's positive qualities while acknowledging their problematic behaviors. You can feel compassion for someone's wounds while refusing to be harmed by their unconscious reactions to those wounds. This psychological skill prevents you from falling into black and white thinking where you either idealize people completely or demonize them entirely. Most toxic people have genuinely positive qualities mixed with unconscious destructive patterns. Recognizing both aspects helps you make clear decisions about how much access to give them. Third, develop what Jung called differentiation, the ability to separate your emotional experience from others' emotional experiences. Just because someone is upset doesn't mean you did something wrong. Just because someone is in pain doesn't mean you're responsible for healing them. Just because someone wants your attention doesn't mean you owe it to them. Jung made a controversial observation. Often the most caring, empathetic, spiritually minded people become magnets for toxic individuals. This isn't because the universe is unfair. It's because these positive qualities, when not balanced with discernment and boundaries, create psychological vulnerability. Highly empathetic people often struggle with what psychologists call emotional boundaries. They feel others' emotions so intensely that they mistake responsibility for those emotions. They see someone in pain and automatically assume they should help fix it. They encounter someone's dysfunction and believe their love should be enough to heal it. But Jung understood that some people are not looking for healing, they're looking for enablers. They're not seeking growth, they're seeking people who will tolerate their stagnation. They're not wanting love, they're wanting control disguised as need. The most spiritually dangerous belief is that everyone deserves unlimited patience, forgiveness, and second chances. While this sounds beautiful in theory, in practice it often means sacrificing your own well-being to accommodate others' unconscious patterns. Jung taught that true spiritual development requires both compassion and discrimination. You can have a loving heart while maintaining clear boundaries. You can wish others well while refusing to be harmed by their unconscious behaviors. You can send someone love from a distance while protecting your own energy up close. In a world that often teaches people, especially women, that selflessness is the highest virtue, protecting your own energy becomes a revolutionary act. Jung believed that individuals who cannot protect themselves inevitably become victims, and victims often unconsciously perpetuate cycles of harm. Protecting your energy isn't selfish, it's necessary for your ability to love authentically. When you're constantly drained by toxic people, you have nothing genuine left to give to healthy relationships. You become resentful, exhausted, and emotionally unavailable to people who actually deserve your care. Jung also taught that allowing others to harm you without consequences actually enables their unconscious patterns. By tolerating manipulation, you confirm to manipulators that their strategies work. By accepting emotional abuse, you reinforce abusers' belief that their behavior is acceptable. True love sometimes requires saying no, setting boundaries, and allowing others to experience the natural consequences of their choices. This isn't punishment, it's reality. And reality is often the only teacher that can reach people operating from unconscious patterns. Once you've cleared toxic influences from your life and done your own shadow integration work, you create space for what Jung called conscious relationships, connections based on mutual growth, authentic communication, and genuine care. Conscious relationships don't require constant management or explanation. Both people take responsibility for their own emotional states while caring about each other's well-being. Conflicts arise, but they're addressed directly and honestly rather than through manipulation or passive aggression. In conscious relationships, both people are committed to their own growth and development. They use the relationship as a mirror for self-awareness rather than as an escape from self-responsibility. They support each other's individuation process rather than trying to merge or control. Jung believed that conscious relationships are rare not because people are incapable of them, but because they require psychological maturity that most people never develop. They require the ability to love without losing yourself, to commit without abandoning your own path, to care without enabling dysfunction. The ultimate protection, becoming who you really are. The ultimate protection against toxic people isn't learning better screening techniques or developing stronger defenses. It's becoming so authentically yourself that people operating from false personas cannot maintain connection with you. Jung called this process individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming conscious of your own unconscious patterns and developing your authentic self. As you become more individuated, you naturally repel people who operate from mask and manipulation because your authentic energy doesn't provide the psychological hooks they need. Authentic people are difficult to manipulate because they're not seeking external validation for their worth. They're not trying to be liked by everyone, so they can't be controlled through approval and disapproval. They trust their own instincts, so they can't be gaslit into doubting their reality. This doesn't mean becoming harsh or closed-hearted. Individuated people are often more compassionate than those operating from ego because their compassion comes from strength rather than need. They can love others without losing themselves, care without enabling, support without sacrificing their own well-being. When you truly understand these patterns, both in others and in yourself, you step into what Jung called conscious choice. You're no longer unconsciously attracted to dysfunction or unconsciously tolerating what harms you. You become deliberate about who receives your energy and why. This consciousness doesn't make you paranoid or suspicious. Instead, it makes you discerning. You can appreciate people's positive qualities while clearly seeing their limitations. You can enjoy connections while maintaining your autonomy. You can love deeply while protecting your peace. The journey towards psychological freedom isn't easy, but it's essential. Every time you choose consciousness over comfort, every time you honor your instincts over others' expectations, every time you protect your energy rather than trying to be endlessly available, you become more truly yourself. And in becoming truly yourself, you not only protect yourself from those who would harm you, you become a beacon for others who are also committed to authentic living. You attract relationships based on truth rather than need, growth rather than comfort, genuine care rather than unconscious patterns. This is Jung's ultimate teaching. The path to freedom lies not in changing others, but in becoming so conscious, so authentic, so psychologically integrated that toxic patterns simply cannot take root in your life anymore. You become immune not through building walls, but through developing unshakable inner knowing. The people who can hurt you are often the ones you haven't learned to see clearly yet. But once you see them, truly see them, their power over you dissolves. And in that dissolution, you find something precious, the freedom to love authentically, connect deeply, and live according to your own truth rather than others' unconscious needs. That is the gift of consciousness. That is the promise of doing your own psychological work. That is why Jung dedicated his life to helping people see what they hadn't seen before. Because in seeing clearly, we become free. And in becoming free, we can finally love without losing ourselves.